Hi, I'm Michelle Pegler of Gingy Makes Quilts. It's January 6th, 2026, and I'm here with my annual trunk show video to share all the quilts that I finished this year. And just as a delightful little bonus, you get to see my new kitten that we got this year rolling around on my tree skirt. And she might create other havoc during the video. Apologies in advance. So it's a whole menagerie here at our house. So I finished 5 quilts this year, which is not as many as in prior years because I'm kind of slowing down and trying to take my time. And I put a lot of effort, especially into my Undersea quilt this year. But the first one that I finished this year was a pattern called Color Outside the Lines. And I'm getting another cat in the video now as well. So Color Outside the Lines was a pattern that I saw at my local quilt shop where it was already made and hung on their wall. And it's a beautifully colorful heart shape made from colored pencils. And when I saw it, I thought to myself, okay, I have to make this quilt for my kids' school because number one, colored pencils is kind of like a school theme. And then at my kids' school, their whole like teaching philosophy is based around heart, and heart to them is an acronym. And they talk about the heart skills, and the heart skills are honor, empathy, accountability, respect, and teamwork. So that spells out heart. And so I started working on this late last fall and finished it just in time for their Heart Week that they do in February around Valentine's Day, which is kind of like their spirit week, and every day is a different theme, and the kids get to dress up in different silly ways. So I gifted that to the school when I had it all done. I chose just a plain red backing because I knew it'd be hung on a wall, no one would ever see it. Used that same red for the binding because I thought that would really pop against the white background around the heart. And then I found kind of a Baptist fan with hearts in it, pantograph, that I quilted on the whole thing, and I think it turned out so beautiful. And the fun thing is that the school actually decided to hang it like in the back of their front office, so it's always right there whenever anyone comes into the school and like talks to the people at the front office. It's just like a really colorful, bright, joyful thing that everyone gets to see at the school. So I also love seeing it, obviously. So the second quilt that I made this year was my Undersea quilt, which I mentioned before is what took me the most time, but I'm so proud of how it turned out. I couldn't find a pattern that I really liked for like underwater animals. My son last year, I think, said he wanted his room to be themed like underwater animals, and he's got, wall decals that are different undersea creatures, and he's got a couple little crochet animals that are undersea creatures. And so, of course, last year my big quilt was for my daughter, the koalas quilt, and I thought, okay, it's my turn this year to make one for my son, and it's got to be underwater themed. So I looked around at a lot of options online. I almost went ahead and made Elizabeth Hartman's underwater creature quilt, but I kind of just had this vision in my head of it being like a whole beach scene with like the sky, and there's a lighthouse on the coast, very Oregon, like a very Oregon beach scene. And so I got out my graph paper and started drawing like how big I wanted the quilt to be. And then I started looking around on Etsy to find individual block patterns that I liked of different types of ocean theme blocks or animal blocks. And so I kind of gathered together all those options, and I sat down with my son and we decided together where each of the different components would be. And some of the different blocks I found on Etsy, I had to like scale up or scale down or change a little bit to make it work. So for instance, I used a lighthouse block, but I had to size it up a little bit to make it fit in the space we wanted and make it like a lot bigger than some of the other animal blocks, because the animal blocks, a lot of them were like a 12-inch square, which is pretty big. So I want the lighthouse to be like even bigger because it's a building, of course. Anyway, it was a really fun design process. When talking with my son, we talked about how the ocean water should be a gradation from like light blue to medium to dark blue at the bottom, because that's like how the real ocean is. It gets darker as you go down deeper. And he also wanted the sky to be sunset colors, so I split the sky into like 3 layers. And that was a lot of fun for me to figure out how the blocks that are in the sky could line up right, as I was like putting together the whole top section. But I got it all to work, and I even designed a couple blocks myself that I couldn't find online good versions of. So like the jellyfish block, I knew I needed to put jellyfish in it. It was one of my son's favorite animals, so I couldn't leave it out. But I just didn't find a jellyfish block on Etsy or anywhere that like had the same kind of look and style as all the other animals that we really liked. So I, again, got on my graph paper and just kind of drew out my own version of a jellyfish block. I did turn that into a PDF pattern if anyone wants to buy it in my Etsy shop. And then I also made some custom blocks for the bottom of the quilt where I wanted seaweed to be growing up out of the sand, and like a rock, and kind of make a little interesting scene down there at the bottom on the sand. So that was the design process. In terms of fabric choices, I took my son to our local fabric store, and we picked the fabrics for the different levels of the water and the sky. With how much quilting is on it, you can't really tell that the water fabrics they all have kind of like a swirly pattern on the actual fabric. And then we picked a sand fabric for the bottom that has sparkles in it, which is really fun because it kind of, for us, mimicked reality, where you might see little glimmers of, sea glass or like just grains of sand at the bottom of the ocean. The other cool thing about the fabrics in this quilt is that for all of the animal blocks, I wanted to use mostly solids, but then one kind of contrast fabric that was from Tula Pink's Tiny Dots and Stripes collection, which is actually what I used in my daughter's koala quilt last year. So I still had scraps left over from that, and I wanted their quilts to kind of go together and be related in some way. So I also have those same fabrics in my son's Undersea Quilt, and then kind of filled it in with other solid fabrics that I had. I did, I think, at least 1 or 2 videos this year about the quilting that I did on the project. Oh my gosh, I just noticed that Kit Kat, our new kitten, is just sitting so nicely here for the video. Probably won't last. So I did custom quilting on the whole thing, and took inspiration from a couple different quilting books to get the right look that I wanted for like the sky texture and the water texture. And I quilted it with a variegated like pastel rainbow thread that's called Opalescence from Fantastico. It's a thread that just like blends really nicely over all the bright colors in the whole quilt. So I will show you the whole quilt here in a second, but if you want to know more about the individual little quilting designs and get like really good close-ups of that, I'd recommend you go check out my other videos that I posted this year about that. And then before I show you the quilt, the other exciting thing about this is that I entered it in the Oregon State Fair, and I won like pretty much all the ribbons you can win. So, there's the whole competition, and it's like sectioned off into different divisions and classes and categories. So it won first place for its like category, which was 1-person pieced quilts, professional level, like original design, professional level quilts. And then it also won best in division and best in class and best in show. So I got 4 ribbons on this one quilt, which was very exciting to see when I went to the state fair, because they don't tell you if you won anything. You just have to go there and find out. So I could see across, the big exhibition hall. I saw my quilt hanging, and I saw like, oh, there's a ribbon on it. And as I got closer, I was like, whoa, there's way more ribbons than I expected. So it was really exciting. I'll show you the quilt, which means I have to kick my cat off of it, unfortunately. And it's pretty big, so I might just show it in sections here. Now I have thought about trying to turn this into a sellable pattern, the whole thing. I think it would need to be at least 30 pages long though, because it's just so complicated with all the different elements to it. So you can see that sunset sky is the yellow, orange, and pink. My son really loves bright colors, and he helped pick all the colors for this quilt. He wanted this bright orange cuddle fabric on the back, which is called Mandarin. And then I put a nice dark teal on the binding just because I didn't think that the orange would be as good of a contrast against some of these sky colors as if I put like a dark teal or blue. So that's the top section. I'll get a little closer so you can see the swirling quilting in the sky, the lighthouse, and then I'll start holding it up a little bit. I got to take this to school and show it off to his classmates for show and tell last year. A lot of them said the orca was their favorite part. There's one of the jellyfish blocks. I put 3 of them on here in 3 different colors. So yeah, like I said, I'm very proud of this quilt, and I hope it's something that he can enjoy using and treasure for a long time. So the next quilt that I finished this year was a mystery sew along called Mystery Brown Bag. I had never heard about it before this year, but heard about it when I went to QuiltCon, and some of the vendor booths had quilt kits for this Mystery Brown Bag sew along. And what's interesting about it is that you buy the quilt kit like sight unseen almost. It was, most of the fabrics were wrapped in a paper bag, so you couldn't see most of them. And then on the outside, it would have like 1 fabric or 2 fabrics that you would be using to give you a little bit of a taste of like the vibe of the quilt. So I found one that had this really fun hot air balloons printed fabric as one of the fabrics that was on the outside. And then it had a nice like rust colored solid as well. And I was like, well, I can't not buy this. So yeah, the mystery of it, I was very excited to find out what was inside the bag. And I bought that quilt kit. The thing with Mystery Brown Bag is like, you can't sign up for it online. You have to buy a kit from a small quilt shop. I don't know all the rules about it, and I think they do it every year. So I might try to find a kit to buy again at this year's QuiltCon because I thought it was really fun how they did it. But you buy a quilt kit from a like small owned quilt shop, and all the quilt kits are like made by the individual shop. So one that I get from this shop would be entirely different from another shop. They all kind of make their own decisions on what fabrics they want to put in their quilt kits to try and sell their quilt kits. I was so happy with the fabrics that were in mine. They were all art gallery fabrics and just really nice shades of tans and browns and rusty oranges and like cute little patterns. It's the kind of fabrics that I could never buy myself in a quilt shop because I'm just naturally drawn to bright colors and like especially cool colors like teal, blue, purple. And I never ever can actually make a quilt that's in like warm colors and neutrals. So I was really excited, like, hey, here's this fabric bundle that's already been curated. And then I got to wait and see what the pattern would look like. So the Brown Bag Mystery pattern this year, they named Dealer's Choice, and they would release parts of it every like couple weeks into a Facebook group, and also you would get mailed like printed directions for the quilt instructions. So I didn't start making it at first. I wanted to kind of see like, am I gonna like the pattern that they've designed, or do I really want to just use these fabrics for a different quilt that I want to make? But after I saw the whole quilt, I really did like the design. I liked how it looked kind of like flower blooms. And so I went ahead and just made the quilt kit as designed. And I put one of my favorite pantographs on it, which is Starlight Panto. I'm putting that on so many things these days. And I put a teal cuddle fabric on the back and the binding. And I did customize it myself a little bit to make it a little bigger. I think the prescribed quilt pattern had it finish as like a small throw quilt. And I just generally like a little bit of a larger throw, so I added some extra borders around it with like a nice thick border of the hot air balloon fabric especially, so that it would finish like closer to a large throw that I like to use as a couch blanket or as a like bed quilt for my kids. However, I did not keep this quilt because one of my good friends had commented on Instagram when she saw the final pictures of it. She said it's like her favorite quilt that I've ever made. And so I decided to gift that to her. So that I don't no longer have it, but of course can show you pictures. The quilting fabric I decided to put, or sorry, quilting thread I decided to put on it was a variegated one called Shades of Vanilla, which is a really nice combination of light, medium, dark tans and creams, and so it just blended really nicely on all the fabrics on that quilt. The fourth quilt I made this year was a panel quilt, well, kind of like a panel plus quilt. One of my friends who I've known since I was like 10 years old, grew up with, we did orchestra together. We've reconnected this past year, and he wanted to have a quilt made for his mom as a Christmas present, and they really like going to see national parks. They've done some family vacations to national parks that are like their most favorite family memories. And so I told him, well, I still have some national parks fabric from when I bought a bundle of it a couple years ago. Just this big panel that had like little pictures of the national parks, like little, 3x4 pictures all next to each other of different national parks. And so I thought a little bit and designed some like sashing that could go around the panels to make it, again, like a nice throw size quilt. And I ran the design by him. We talked about color schemes, and we said, oh yeah, it's going to be like earth tones and like just like very natural looking. So I found some really nice like browns and greens and orange and yellow type fabrics to make the frames and the borders around those panels. And I really love how it turned out. We talked about doing a nice dark green on the back, so I picked Cuddle Emerald for the back and the binding. And then I got to try a new variegated quilting thread called Spice Cake, which I've never used before, but I thought it would work perfectly because it's like a mix of earth tones, like greens and browns and orangey yellows. So yeah, it worked great. And I honestly think that pattern I created, I might use again for other panel quilts. It went together pretty quickly, and it can help kind of lower the cost of a custom order quilt because there's not as much piecing to do since you're using these big panels of fabric. So it kind of comes together pretty quickly. So then there was one more quilt I finished this year, which was a pattern called Scrappy Arrows by Emily Dennis. I love so many of her patterns, and you've probably heard me talk before about patterns I've made from her. Oftentimes her patterns are really quick to sew together. I would say this one is not as quick, only because it's all flying geese blocks. And so if you're a quilter, you know that flying geese blocks take just extra time because you often make them bigger and then trim them down, which is how I did all of these. So I think I had to make over 200 flying geese blocks for the size quilt that I wanted, and you make them 4 at a time, you cut them apart, you iron them, trim them down, etc. But I love how it turned out, so I'll show it to you. I had been saving these fabrics for a long time and kind of had this picture in my mind of this exact quilt, and just finally decided this was the year to make it. Hope you can see enough of that. So again, this is a nice large throw size quilt. I put a new color of cuddle fabric I've never used on the back, which is called Wild Rose. It's kind of a mauve-y purple. So really nice, and you can see I also put Starlight Panto on this quilt because I can't get away from it. I decided to make the binding pop a little bit more though, and did navy on the binding rather than putting the Wild Rose around the whole edge. and I think that was a good choice. And the quilting thread I used on this one was another very good thread called Wintry Morning, which is a variety of light to medium blues. So when I tested out different threads, that's the one that I thought blended the best. This background is just like a Kona solid. I think it's called Coastal as the color. And and the fabrics that make all the flying geese are from a collection called Ladybird. And I still have so many fabric scraps left over, so I might even make another another quilt from the same collection because I love it so much. I don't know, I'm just such a sucker for floral prints, I guess, especially when you put it on a nice teal or like a minty. It's so beautiful. So that was all the quilts I made this year. I'm in progress on a couple that I'm going to be finishing up pretty soon. I've got a scrap quilt that I'm finishing up, and I've got this past year's Build a Quilt by Quilting as My Therapy. I'm pretty close to being done with that one and kind of going back and forth on whether I'm going to do custom quilting on it or just do a pantograph. Coming up this next year, I'm going to do the New Year's Build a Quilt because, again, Angela Walters creates just such beautiful fabric collections that I can't resist. So I think that's starting around March or April. And then I have some smaller projects that I still want to get to. Like I have a really cool noodle head backpack kit that I got at QuiltCon that I want to put together soon. And then I have a really good idea for another quilt that's going to feature Tula Pink fabrics, like a lot of her hero prints that are like big and you really want to see them in their entirety. I have an idea of how I can make that happen this year, and I mean, her fabrics are always gorgeous, so I'm sure it'll turn out great. In terms of State Fair quilt this year, I don't know if I'm going to have one ready to actually enter. I mean, I could just enter this, and I might just enter this, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to get one custom quilted by the summer to have my, big moment at the State Fair like I enjoy doing. But I don't know, I feel like pressure's off because I already won the most ribbons I could possibly win this year with Undersea Quilt, and I might just take a year off. I don't know. So that's where I'm at, and I think I'm gonna have a lot of fun making more stuff this year. Well, anyway, I appreciate you watching. If you want to see more of me, there are lots of other videos on my YouTube, and you can also check me out on Instagram, is where I usually post my kind of day-to-day, month-to-month content. I don't post too much there, and I try to make it pretty high quality posts when I do. So appreciate you watching. Thanks.